Welcome everyone to our webinar today. If you've joined one of our Stamped webinars before, you know that we're always joined by experts who are here to share their ideas, their takes on the market, and specifically some tactics that you can implement to improve your e-commerce strategy. So today we're talking about all things Shopify Winter Editions. We are recording today, so if you need to hop off or you want to send this in a follow-up afterwards, we'll make sure that you receive that in a follow-up email 24 hours after the event. We also have a Q&A session. A few of you submitted questions before the event. Feel free to add them to the chat or to the Q&A feature on Zoom as we go, and we'll make sure that we have time at the end. We're going to have a pretty informal roundtable conversation with our experts today, talking about all of the kind of 4 largest areas in the Shopify Editions release recently that we think will have the most impact for you. So let's introduce our experts. I'll kick it off. I'm not an expert on Shopify Editions, but I am on Stamped. My name is Tila. I'm our marketing team lead. I've been here for about 2 years now working with this community of brands. And I'll hand it over to Natalie, our director of product here at Stamped, to introduce herself.
Thank you so much. I just love software, especially e-commerce software. And I've been lucky enough to see it from a few different sides as a developer, a designer, and a project manager, and now have the pleasure of kind of orchestrating all these disciplines to produce effective and delightful platforms for users. So part of my job is, of course, staying on top of all of these trends and getting to talk with really interesting people like Chad and David here.
All right, I'll go next. I'm Chad Fisher. I'm the CEO founder of Ambaum. We are a Shopify Plus partner, have been, my gosh, it'll be 8 years in November, which feels like an eternity in the Shopify ecosystem. And we are really like an outsourced fractional CTO for a lot of Shopify Plus brands, and then their development arm. All right, David.
Hello, David Stober. Chad and I both live up here in Seattle. I am a converted brand owner, now agency partner. Cut my teeth migrating my little Magento store to Shopify Plus back in 2013, 2014. So ran that operation for about 10 years and then kind of jumped on the agency side with Chad, who's been a longtime friend of mine. So yeah, like what Chad mentioned, we kind of view the world a little bit differently, kind of through the lens of a brand owner, with both Chad and I being merchants. So we kind of liken ourselves as kind of a merchant first agency. So that's the lens I view the world through.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much for being here and both of you bringing your expertise on. I'm going to turn it over to Natalie to introduce our first topic.
I'm really excited to kick this off with what I think is probably the juiciest update here that hits where all of you spend probably the majority of your time, your product catalog. And of course, at Stamped, we ingest your products to be able to attach reviews and rewards to all of these items. So I've seen many unique interpretations of Shopify's product variant relationship from merchants such as yourselves. And especially clothing brands. You get into color, size, material, limited edition prints. So many brands have whole products that are just limited edition prints or these short runs. Because you want to have the freedom to entice carousels, make products with different angles, let it have its own description, really tie into the marketing, give it a different title, a unique URL so that you can market with that. And that really wasn't possible before at Shopify. You had to finagle a whole bunch of weird things to be able to make that possible. So now, though, you can do this with combined listings. You still have to set up different products functionally, but you can attach them together so that these listings can be combined and be more discoverable to your users. This really helps us at Stamped too. So we understand that your spotted print sweater and your striped one are really the same product, of course. And we wanted to help you increase the volume of your reviews that could appear on any individual sweater PDP by allowing you to group these reviews together. But it's a little clunky, of course, because we're not trying to be your product source of truth, right? Shopify is. And so in order to make this happen, you have to do a lot of double work. We don't really like that. So we're excited to be able to have these combined listings because then reviews will naturally kind of group together and save you a lot of time. And there's another aspect that Shopify changed towards these product attributes. David, I know that you are so passionate about this one. The 100 variants to 2,000 variants, 2,000 picked out of the sky. Is that just a random number? What do you think?
Yeah. I think you stole a little bit of my thunder with that description. Yeah, I mean, we spend and have spent a lot of time untangling and doing workarounds relative to product variants, and that 100 product variant limit. So this kind of opens up the doors for all kinds of activities. And I think, that, what's really key for us is that parent-child kind of relationships, and that you were just now describing in terms of, the different colors and such. And, if I can't even tell you how many times we've had to build workarounds for that, which have been a little bit clunky, super hard to admin. And really at the end of the day, it's, brands go to Shopify to kind of leverage this massively powerful kind of do it yourself, like if it's low leverage type of activities, for admins and operators to actually be able to do things themselves. And that was a big sticking point for a lot of brands, because, the value of having these, what otherwise would be variants as actual products from an SEO perspective, from a search and visibility perspective, now with semantic search within Plus, some of those things, it just unlocks all kinds of creative opportunities for brands to really tell their story and get product information out there the way it needs to get out there. There's some other layers to these improvements that I think, that are a little bit noticeable, a little bit more lower leverage though, things like draft orders and discounts and some of those things. But, the nits of it is really that variant limit and that parent-child kind of relationship that we just now, all of a sudden, it's just like, look, that was low leverage development, burning a lot of hours, spending a lot of the client's money, when now that just unlocks and we can go kind of focus that into more higher leverage activities that are a little bit more growth related.
And just to jump in there, when you're talking about that parent-child relationship, I think this is especially important for merchants who have maybe like seasonal variants. If you got a Santa sweater, you're not going to sell all year round. You can now publish and unpublish those variants. So you don't have to delete it and then re-add it again. So frustrating. So yeah, I think that's going to be huge too.
Yeah, totally.
I think the only other thing I would add around product attributes is, when I step back, Shopify, the way they've organized everything, products are the atomic unit of everything that Shopify works around. I mean, it is literally ground zero of, if you think about what do they build up from, it's how do you organize, configure, and provide metadata around a product? How do you make it searchable? How does it flow into the checkout? And so these types of, reworks, especially on the variant one. I mean, my gosh, that I feel like 8 years ago when we started with Plus Partner, people were talking about the variant limit, and a lot of the competition would hold it over Shopify as a selling point and say like, well, look, you can't go to Shopify because they only have this 100 variant limit, and it only took 8 years, but we got there. But the point is that these are really, really powerful updates that Shopify is making, because it's really, if you think about the really big picture, 2 years ago when Toby and Shopify started Shopify Editions, it really gave this cadence and just focus on the core platform. And it's so powerful as, whether you're an app like Stamped, whether you're an agency like us, whether you're a merchant, because now Shopify is reworking everything from the ground up. And these are the types of, when we look at this Editions, we're just starting with the products, but there's so much that's included in here. Like this little webinar we're doing, we're going to probably cover like maybe 1/10 of what's in there, which can be both, fantastic opportunity as a merchant, but can also be a little overwhelming because there's a lot. But from a good news perspective, it just means that there's tons of features that you're going to be able to leverage. And I'm not going to go into a ton of detail, but I think another one that deserves a mention here is meta fields, and what Shopify has done to rework it and make it customizable within the theme, if it's a Shopify 2.0 theme. And there's so many things you can do around metadata for your products, like part numbers, color swatches, star ratings, files for downloads, part lists. And then now you can even reorganize those meta fields into meta objects and kind of put them into a bucket. And there's just a lot that, especially us selfishly as a development agency, and then some of the apps out there, we can leverage that functionality to provide some really neat PDP experiences for a lot of our merchants.
Definitely something that we're trying to leverage a little bit more are the new discount types. Of course, making loyalty software, we care deeply about the discounts. And so not only can you add discounts now to draft orders, which really helps when maybe you're taking orders kind of like as a customer success person or as like pre-orders if you do limited runs. You can add those discounts now to those draft orders. And then the addition of buy one, get one, we're definitely going to release some new rules around that at Stamped to be able to have more exciting kind of discounts there. But here, I guess maybe I'll make a transition to go to our Shopify subscriptions. So discounts is just one of the ways that you can get people to make repeat purchases, but subscriptions, this is so interesting to me because I think it's mostly a response to brand behavior we've seen in the last few years, especially CPG, health and beauty, entertainment, some apparel brands. Subscriptions have become a highly worn avenue for growth. And we certainly at Stamped understand that you want to increase new subscriptions and get new customers onto that subscription track, see how long you can engage them for. And like all loyalty software, we've integrated with Recharge, of course. But I'm going to tease some key improvements that we're releasing in the coming months to our Recharge integrations that are different than anything else you've seen from like a Yotpo. So we just don't want to help you get new subscribers. We also want to push your subscribers further down the funnel, make sure you get more orders and more longer lasting kind of commitment to those subscribers. So if your break even is on the third subscription order, maybe you can offer a discount on the fourth, or multiply the points that you earn for each order after a certain number. I'm really excited about the discounts that we can offer here to help incentivize, people going further down that subscription funnel. But
Yeah,
oh yeah, sorry, go ahead.
I was just gonna add as an agency partner, one of the biggest bonks that we have from a loyalty perspective is just that, and we talked about that where it's that tight integration with Recharge where, arguably, I don't know what the official count is, but probably 60% of the brands we work with have subscription. And because of that, as I think about loyalty and the clunkiness of how the user experience of getting into their customer portal and applying discounts or points to orders, I mean, it's a big blocker and people really lose steam because of the constant customer service questions that are asked and how do I apply it? How do I redeem it? All these different things. So we're super thrilled as an agency that that's occurring because quite frankly, it's just been kind of a May experience up until this point.
And I don't have a ton more to add here on subscriptions. If you two have got it, we can, and we don't need to push this forward, but there's a lot that you're kind of hinting at that's going to play into some of these future slides, especially as Shopify scripts are going to be deprecated into or replaced by Shopify functions.
Yeah,
But
I just want to.
If you guys have other stuff to add here, yeah, feel free to.
Well, I just want to add that another part of these upgrades that we're making that kind of aligns with the discounts that are offered by this new Shopify upgrade is that we're going to change the way that our checkout widget behaves. And so your customers can log in and redeem their points, of course, and claim discounts right at that point of purchase. But now we're going to make it even easier to be able to have a list of promotions available on your checkout page. And so that buy one discount, get one discount, these different subscription discounts are going to be more localized to where that incentivization for conversion matters most. And I think it's going to dramatically reduce your abandoned carts. But yeah, I know you're eager to talk about checkout extensibility.
No, it's fine. I mean, there's a lot. Yeah, I mean, on discount, especially on, I know we kind of like got into discounts there, but there's a lot like with functions in terms, like you said, not only just like stacking discounts and allowing a lot more composability from a development standpoint, because scripts was just so clunky to write. And then not to mention the conflicts we would get with apps and just the degradation of performance during the checkout. Just made things so much more difficult. Now it's a whole new world. You kind of have to learn to get into functions. It's not just us as an agency. It's obviously you guys as the apps as well. That, it's a really, just like I was saying earlier with the product being kind of fundamentally reimagined. I mean, so is checkout. Like it's not live yet for everybody, but a lot of merchants are jumping on board. So with, I guess I gave myself my own little segue there. I'll start off here on the checkout extensibility. So this August is the first big milestone where checkout.liquid is going to be deprecated for the information, shipping, and payment pages. The thank you and the order status pages will be later in August 2025. So it's kind of like a two-step process that Shopify has to get upgraded to get checkout extensibility set up, which then allows you to move on from scripts and into Shopify functions. In addition, you get a way easier to use checkout editor, faster checkout performance. You can do branding on the checkout page itself. Hopefully it's going to be, a lot of apps are going to take better advantage of it and give you a lot more opportunity to do cross sells and specifically upsells during the funnel and the thank you process. Maybe that might be a little bit slow to come out because that, won't really happen until 2025. But we already seen a lot of merchants jump on this because number one, they don't want to wait. I mean, we're sitting here in April and it's only like 3 months, and it's going to be a really big deal when they kind of flip the switch and, scripts aren't going to work for those components of your checkout. So you really, as a merchant, you have to be on it. You have to understand what's going to happen. And especially if you've got some real custom logic created that you're kind of relying on for your checkout process. So, that from where we sit has been a really big just process because, like I said, merchants need to figure out what to do. We needed to understand exactly what it means because as we, reconfigure a lot of the, just like we were talking about earlier, the discounting process, we have to kind of rework those scripts into functions. And that's kind of the leading edge of what's happening in the checkout process because there's so much that can be done on the shipping side. Like I said, upsells, thank you, just branding. I really think that what's happening here is it was a really kind of limited feature set that you had before, and it was all kind of tied around scripts. Now it's going to be, and it might take a little bit, but it's going to be a lot more wide open for both, merchants, as agencies, and the apps like Stamped.
And really, I think it put a lot of onus on the merchant to be able to understand how to input the script into the liquid files or, and not break all of their branding that they paid so much for, and that I find is going to be the biggest advantage on the merchant side. You have a block that's going to go into your page that you can then drag and drop. There's a lot very straightforward text inputs that you can put, you don't have to fiddle around with code. And so yeah, I think it's an overall way better experience for the merchants.
Yeah, there's going to be some things that are still going to require some development. Like for example, like it's not necessarily work development, but let's just say like debugging or some technical level of expertise, because things like, what broke initially during Shopify's current checkout process is like Google Tag Manager doesn't always work really well. Like it's kind of, that's the funny, like bane of our existence, because we have these advertising agencies say, no, we've got it set up, it's working. And the app company's like, that's not our problem, it's how it was installed. And then as the development agency, we're like, we're not the ones that are running your ad campaign. So it's like this no-fly zone of this problem that just kind of sits in the middle. And so it'll be interesting to see if, like with this new Web Pixels API that Shopify has and the Shopify Pixels Manager, like if that, hopefully improves the process for merchants and makes it a little bit easier, because it's one of those like just problem areas that we all kind of have had to struggle with.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think trying to see what else. So to highlight here, I think that the big thing, I've hit most of the high notes here, but it's like, if you're a merchant, if I'm sitting in a merchant shoes right now, it's just, there's a lot of good documentation out there that Shopify has. Like if you just Google checkout extensibility upgrade, Shopify's done a great job of putting together a nice little, work through or walk through that kind of explains like what's going to happen, the deadlines, the timelines. It can get a little bit, like I said, technical if you follow it down its like ultimate path, because they start talking about like all the different APIs and all how functions work, and that can get a little bit overwhelming. But it's one of those things that, if I'm a merchant right now, I just need to be educated, because it's possible this isn't a huge issue, because if you haven't really customized the checkout process, this isn't going to be something that's a super big problem. But you are going to still want to upgrade, because like I said, the apps are going to start taking advantage of it pretty quickly. And so you're even if you haven't customized your checkout, I would say spend some time to get it done.
Yeah. And to go back to your earlier point about the functions specifically, as like app developers, I think this is one of the most exciting things that we are thinking about, to different ways to bring functionality to the merchants. We had to make some kind of like weird concessions in our UI to be able to, deliver discount codes to people and then hope and pray that they put those discount codes into the checkout experience in the right way. Now, I think we're going to be able to auto apply discounts. So if we know that someone is a specific VIP tier, if they have accumulated a certain amount of points, we'll be able to pop up those promotions there, and they can either choose and consent to use those promotions at the time, or if it's something like free shipping that is just arguably an advantage no matter what, we could automatically put it there for them. And so yeah, I'm really excited about all of the, I guess, like UX improvements that we can add to merchant sites on behalf of them with these functions.
Yeah, I saw a
Yeah,
comment.
and some,
Go ahead, David.
yeah, I was just going to say in all these cases, from a non-technical perspective and putting on my merchant hat, it's allowing these brands to test, change, optimize, do a lot of things, and quite frankly, do them without our help, right? Like it's going to put the power in their hands. I mean, certainly there's a place and a need for development, but in low leverage opportunities where you're basically trying to just optimize and drag some things around and insert different functionality within that checkout, I just think it's just a fantastic get for Shopify, and it really unlocks a lot of things.
Yeah, to address the Q&A question about the Q&A question there is spot on. Like there is a lot of like jargon and technical, stuff that we get into the weeds here, especially around checkout extensibility, because it is a kind of a complicated process, but David distilled it down very nicely. I mean, really what Shopify is doing is they're trying to take the power out of the like having to customize everything, to let's bring it back to the merchant and make it as easy as possible from a UI perspective, from getting into the theme itself, from working with the apps, to just make things easier. Because that's really, if we were to simplify, I mean, or to distill everything down, it's like they're trying to simplify your life as a merchant. And so there's just a lot of, unfortunately, there's some complexity in the process to get to that step, but that's where they're headed. All right, should we go to B2B? Anything else?
Chat B2B here.
Yeah. All right, I'll start off here. Now, this is another one that David and I are really excited about, because we do a lot of business in the part space. We have a lot of that's where Shopify has been, over the last, I could say 3 to 5 years, they've been attacked by whether it's BigCommerce, Magento, and, rightfully so. Like Shopify didn't have a very robust B2B solution. I mean, the wholesale channel kind of worked if you did a very vanilla B2B, had a very vanilla B2B implementation, but it just didn't allow for a lot of the fundamental features that you would expect if you're running a wholesale business. And a lot of those, show up with things like setting up company profiles and different company locations. And I know this can get a little bit complicated for if you're just like a regular D2C merchant that has one warehouse, sells in one spot. But if you're a merchant that has a multitude of channels that you sell through, and wholesale is one of them, the ability to create these quantity rules, price lists, company meta fields. David mentioned draft orders earlier, applying discounts to draft orders. And draft orders is just a way for, it sounds fancy, but it's all it is instead of paying upon checkout, you can actually set it up so the customer can check out, and then they can pay on terms like maybe net 30 or net 60 or something, further on down the road. And, you can vault credit cards with B2B. There's just so many customizable and custom solutions that you can do now. Not to mention that it's not just something we can do as a developer or development agency. It's that you can, as a merchant, can get in there and control and power, on your own. Now, a lot of this is still being built out. Like there's a core set of functionality that exists, and there's also a lot of things in the roadmap, like functions working with B2B. That's not, 100% dialed in right now. That might take a little bit. So just, you got to be a little careful if you're a really big B2B power user in terms of the things that are happening and the timing of when they're going to come out. But from where we sit, selfishly, we love this, all the attention that Shopify is putting on it, because it makes our conversations with these B2B merchants so much more impactful, because we can not only explain solutions that we can build for them, but we can just show them like, hey, here's what you can do from the admin panel yourself.
Yeah, and I think, you know, beyond that, it really is an acknowledgement that not everything is D2C, right? Like people still place purchase orders, people still have to talk to to customers on the phone, and how are those workflows and processes integrated into an organization that wants to be entirely D2C and digital, but the reality is that that's not always the case. And I think some of these this functionality and some of these capabilities within B2B are really going to allow for brands like, we have a couple brands where the demo of the users is like 55 to 65 years old. Guess what? Those people like to pick up the phone and call people, so they still have a customer service team. And I think it's an acknowledgement that there's a lot of businesses like that, and especially the types of businesses, and it's especially relevant for a big swatch of the groups that we work with, right? Like we work with a lot of legacy kind of antiquated businesses, like go down the street and they're a parts business that, oh geez, they're doing 10, 15, $20 million. Who would have thunk it? And they want to kind of create a digital experience. So a lot of these capabilities and functions are really tailored towards those kind of businesses, which I would argue Shopify views as the underbelly of where their growth is going to come in the future. So we're super excited for selfish reasons, because a lot of the businesses that we deal with, we certainly do our fair share of D2C brands and super sexy, high growth, venture backed, brands. But on the flip side, we do a big chunk with sausage making brands and groups that are, they're more antiquated, a little bit more legacy. So we're very thrilled with it.
Yeah, I think a couple other quick things to point out. I mean, there's a whole theme that Shopify created called the trade theme that's kind of optimized and designed for B2B. So that's something to kind of play around with if you're a merchant in the B2B space. And then, there's just a lot.
Is that out yet, Chad? Chad, is that out yet?
Yeah, that's a great question.
Can't find it yet.
Yeah, I thought it was, but yeah, that is always a little bit of there's a caveat to these editions. I would say half the things mentioned editions are live. The other quarter is live in a couple months. The other quarter will be live in 3 to 4 to 5 months afterwards. So it's not always like an immediate go live. You could check that out, David. And then, there's other things like recording partial payments off platform, restricting access for sales reps, like just some really, I know a lot of this could be esoteric if you're, like I said, if you're just a D2C merchant, no, this is you're not going to care that much about it. But if you're in this space, it's pretty powerful what Shopify is kind of creating here.
Yeah, we have a question in the Q&A asking if
live today
is only available with Shopify Plus still. And I think the answer is yes. But do either of you know, do they have plans to make that more widely available?
What was the question again? Say it again.
Oh, is B2B only available for Shopify Plus?
Yeah. So yeah, I'll take that one. Yes. The core functionality that we've been talking about is you're required to have Shopify Plus. But I mean, there are solutions there's apps and there's some custom things you can do to kind of mimic, or you could set up another separate store. You can do a subdomain. There's lots of ways that we would kind of work with core merchants to give them kind of a light, what we call B2B experience. But yeah, all these really kind of powerful things Shopify is rolling out are rolled into the Plus, contract.
Yeah, but typically, I don't know, like depending upon how you look, I would encourage folks to do deep dives on Plus and do it earlier, because a lot of times what you find is, even call it a $1 to $2 million brand on Shopify Core, the delta, and we're going through a couple of these right now with some of these new capabilities. The delta between Plus and non-Plus depending upon what your average order value is, and there's a number of different variables that go into that. But oftentimes you'll find that delta is a lot smaller than you think. And if you think about the bump from a ROI perspective, or from an average order value or conversion rate by adding extensibility into Shopify Plus, I think at least the brands we're walking through this exercise with right now and kind of doing the spreadsheet analysis and looking at bottom line number and then comparing that to, okay, like what occurs when we bump that conversion rate up by just a few basis points, that gap is pretty small. So I think, brands that are on a fast track, 500,000 million, kind of looking at doing a couple $1 million in the next couple of years, I think you should really do a deep dive on that, because I think a lot of times the number may be kind of big, $2,300 or whatever contract you sign, but oftentimes that will you'll get much more value out of it. So that's my words of wisdom.
Yeah, and there's a couple other B2B questions here. So Catherine, you're asking about, you do some wholesale selling. If you're on Plus already, it will be in the admin section of Shopify, and you can just enable it, and that you'll kind of initially get access. Now, you'll want to be careful, because depending on what theme you have, like some of those features, just kind of depends on how your number one, you have to have an online 2.0 theme to really kind of take advantage of it. You also have to have, it just depends on what you've set up, and how you've got, you're like, for example, do you have customers configured with tags, in terms of like tagging them as wholesale, and what are do you have pricing tiers? You kind of have to think through the logic of what you want to set up, and then you can do, whether you DIY yourself or work with somebody else, there's ways to kind of roll that out. And same with your question on like, are you able to add minimum quantity? Yes, you can do that. I mean, you can do it through your theme. Sometimes the themes will allow that. You can add custom logic in the theme, whether it's, just like we would do it, like whether the checkout.liquid, or not checkout.liquid, but just the liquid template itself, we would, potentially customize. Maybe I don't think we'd ever have to go to like add JavaScript or something like that, but there's a lot of ways we could do that. And then there's some apps that also, depending on what you're doing, would allow you to set minimum quantities.
Awesome. Since we're already in Q&A, let's roll through and keep going with some of the pre-submitted questions. For those of you who have questions for the team, please add them to the chat or to the Q&A. We'll keep going with this. So the first question that we had submitted was, tell me a bit more about Shopify audiences. How can we use these in our e-commerce and marketing strategies? Who wants to take that one?
Yeah, I'll take a swing at that. I mean, we are proudly not a marketing agency. We are dev focused, fractional development, fractional CTO, but because of the brands and the size of the brands that we work with, oftentimes we kind of get drugged into that. The best way to describe that is it's, what it is a refined segmentation and list of customers and potential customers, leveraging Shopify's entire network. You kind of get if you just Google Shopify audiences and kind of get to the nits of what they call it and what they describe as the benefit, it's pretty simple. You're more efficient with your marketing lists and segments that you're going to be marketing to and remarketing to.
Yeah, if you're on Plus, it's like we're kind of amazed, and like David said, we're not a marketing agency, but we talk to a lot of merchants at a really detailed level, and we're kind of amazed at a lot of the merchants that don't even know about it. Like, it's kind of a weird thing where Shopify kind of pushes it, but doesn't totally push it. So it's just sort of this weird gap where, from where we sit, it's like, man, you should at least take a flyer on it as a merchant, because you can save money, and it kind of functions like lookalike audiences in Facebook. It's like, go for it. Like, there's really no downside.
I think one of the challenges there is that the ad agencies haven't really learned it well enough, and they're the ones that are driving it for the brands. So we have a couple that, these are bigger brands that were, hey, you guys are on Plus, let's get going with audiences. And it's a process of getting that information over to the marketing folks to really leverage that, because there's literally no harm and no cost to execute it. You can set up a couple campaigns. You do one with the Shopify audiences list. You do one with your normal list. You see what works, and Shopify's betting that you're going to see some massive improvements and efficiencies.
Amazing.
Which is what we've experienced too.
Perfect. We'll make sure to include that link to the education piece in the follow-up email, so that we can make sure that everyone on this call knows how to use it. So next question is for you, Natalie. It was submitted in advance. How are people using loyalty programs to drive customer LTV?
Oh my goodness. Well, I mean, if we think about what a loyalty program is supposed to be, it's you're adding discounts to any part of your store. You want to try to incentivize kind of new customers to have repeat purchases, and while simultaneously rewarding customers for their loyalty, for lack of a better word. So I find that the best implementations of a loyalty program really focus on community first. They have behaviors or actions that they know that they want people to do, whether it's like engaging in their social posts, and so then incentivizing them to go and follow on Instagram, or joining their Facebook community. And so then again, incentivizing them to go and join that community. But understanding where you want people to live, pointing them in that direction, and then really kind of feeding into those community spaces to drive it further.
We were talking about
I know
this.
David gets into loyalty quite a bit. Anything you want to add here, David?
No, I think I added it. I'm super excited about what Stamp's doing, mainly to simplify it for users. I think historically it's been clunky and gotten in the way, and I think with the tight integration with Recharge, and then certainly the communications part with Klaviyo, I think that's super attractive. And historically, what you find with kind of call it sub $15 million brands is somebody, a vice president of marketing, yells at an e-commerce manager, "Hey, let's go do loyalty," and they're like, "Well, what the hell does that mean? And what do I do with that?" And they push the install button, they get it going. It's not really too costly to administer that because no one's really engaged, so no one kind of thinks about it, and then eventually they churn because they say, "Hey, what apps are you not using?" "Well, loyalty." Uninstall. And I think a lot of that is just because of the complexities from a funnel and user experience. So I'm excited about some of this tight integration because I think that's where it lives and that's where it needs to be.
Yeah, I'm so glad you brought that up. It's totally blanked on my mind, but a big part of what we're trying to do in our strategy going forward is not just have a list of discounts. We don't need to have a roster of ways that you can earn or ways that you can redeem, but it's really about the touch points between you and your customer. How are you investing in that relationship? And how do we kind of help you invest in that relationship by creating these offers, creating these moments, creating these points of like, "Oh, you do appreciate my loyalty. You do appreciate me as being a part of your community, as paying into repeat purchases here or being loyal to your brand." And so we feel very strongly that that connection between merchant and customer is really kind of the crux of loyalty. So we're investing more in our Klaviyo and attentive integrations, making sure that all of the flows that you can create there and the trigger events and the moments of either replenishment or other kind of ways that you can incentivize people are automated for you and just make it really easy for you to connect with your customers better.
Yeah, I think you just now said the word moment a couple times. So if your marketing people at Stamped aren't listening to that, I mean, at the end of the day, what you want to do is create little unexpected moments of joy, right? Like, oh my God, I get X, and it's not super obvious, but it's unexpected, and it's just a cute little nice moment where you feel special as a user, and you go, "Shit, I've been spending this much money with a brand for this many years. It's nice to get something for free or to perceived to be free from a shipping perspective, from a buy one get one perspective." And that's just, I think at the end of the day, that's what any marketing person is trying to do, right? Is create that moment. And I think this will go to that.
Marketing people at Stamped are on the call, David. So I was taking notes there. I would
Yeah,
also
so you
say,
got
like,
that one?
I got that one. The feeling that a good loyalty program should replicate is that feeling of like personalization alongside the delight piece. I find that the programs that I'm the most interested in are like the ones that are replicating that feeling that you have at your local corner store, that you can drop in all the time. You know the people who work there. And every now and then, maybe you like, I don't know, forget your phone so you don't have your Apple Pay and you hit them up next time when you come back. Like that's the feeling, to replicate that I have a relationship with this brand and we're strategically scaling those moments of delight or those moments of reward. So, any other tips about loyalty before we move to the next question? No. Okay, this one was, can you break down meta fields more? I'd like to get more granular with my personalization. I'm new to the concept and don't know where to start. What's the like, explain it like I'm 5 version of meta fields and personalization?
Yeah, I'll jump in. I think that, it's a fancy way to say product attributes. And even a simpler way to say it is like really to distill it down to, it's like, it's think about like if you're selling a t-shirt, it's colors, like that's a meta field. It's sizes, then you can get really crazy with, like if you wanted to, that's where I was kind of talking about earlier in the conversation, where you could have like all this other data about it, like color swatches, where if you wanted to show off, like, and gets into the combined listings, functionality, where before you had to have like all these different URLs and all these different products, all these different colors. Now you can kind of roll it all into one, and then you can show swatches and you can show, sizes, and now you get 2,000 variants. So it's like, it all kind of like comes together. And that's a really good question, because, like the ingredient list, like let's say you've got like a ready-made meal prep company or whatever, you can do lists like that for automotive. You can do parts lists that show like all the different, you can add PDFs, so it's really just a way to append all these just really powerful pieces of data to your product. And, as a merchant, you probably know those things in your head, but it's, you have to realize that actually the long tail of your customers, they may be searching for these really like random things that if you can display that data, not only is it when they get there, they can see, oh, wow, that's exactly what I had in my head. You've got that ingredient that I'm looking for, or you've got that size or that color or whatever. You're finding a way to connect with a customer at a really detailed level. And then from an SEO perspective as well, I mean, there's just like, that's adding a lot more metadata that's going to be valuable to allow you to show up in random searches. Hopefully that answers it.
Awesome. Another version of that question, can you break down semantic search? You mentioned this briefly. Can you talk us through what it is and why we should be so excited about it?
Who mentioned that earlier? Did you, Natalie? I don't remember.
I might have. I think at the end of the day, this is certainly Shopify kind of taking a little bit more of the share of search. Search is a pretty big category, but I think what it's doing is out of the box giving more functionality through the metadata as well to surface the right product at the right time in that search, right? Like, and kind of deciphering and interpreting what a user is actually looking for by way of meta fields and product attributes and such. So I think what it is a clear sign that Shopify is getting more heavily engaged on the search front. Shopify search has always just been completely meh. And if you're doing anything, that you're not going to be using Shopify search. But I think this is kind of the stake in the ground they plan on getting serious with it.
Not Shopify search, but in Stamped, we have searchable reviews. So when people use our reviews widget, people can search through them. And we've done a study recently about the performance of those. So does having searchable reviews actually increase the likelihood of someone converting? And we found that when folks search a review, they're 6 times more likely to complete the purchase than if they just scroll through and look through topic filters.
Yeah, that's powerful. Yeah, that makes a ton of sense. I mean, it just gets back to like Shopify, back to the atomic unit is the product, and metadata. You take this product and you flow it through your site, whether it's search, whether it's checkout, whether it's, just everything that your site, the collection pages, how you're aggregating things, how you're displaying all your data. And now that they're kind of fixing everything at the core, it's going to allow everything through the entire process to flow so much easier. And it's going to unlock a ton of crazy functionality. I mean, we didn't talk about all the AI stuff that Shopify is doing with, Magic and allowing you to write product descriptions, image editing. And, it's going to be it's an exciting time, especially as a merchant, because you think about all the stuff that you're going to be able to leverage here in the next, we've got another editions coming out in 2 months. So I guess we got to do this again in like 4 or 5 months.
I'm so glad you brought up the image editing. I know that it's like a much smaller feature and probably not a huge time save, but I just think it's so interesting from the merchant perspective. Like if you think about how costly it is to get a photographer to come in and get every single color or every single version of your product in like different scenarios, being able to have that kind of like magic touch to it and create variations, create interesting plays for people. It's just that, to me, I think that's a kind of like hidden gem in this editions.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, those were all of our questions that were submitted. So we can wrap up and give folks a couple minutes back in their day. I do want to give you 2 opportunities to chat with folks on the call. So first, if you want to chat with Stamped and talk a little bit more about how you can use reviews and loyalty to grow your e-commerce store, you can use this QR code here, which is very blurry for some reason. So I'm going to pop a link into the chat if you'd also like to book a demo. Book a demo with us, talk to our sales team. They're here. They're happy to offer their advice and to consult with you on how you could readjust your review strategy or your loyalty strategy, or if those are new to you. And we are offering a prize. The first 3 people to book a demo can receive a $100 Audible gift card. So I'm going to give you a minute to do that if you would like to.
Ooh, it does work. That's nice. Good job, Tila.
Even though the QR code is blurry, it works. Good
Yeah.
to know. Perfect. All right. And then if you want to meet with David and Chad for a debrief about how you can implement some of these strategies, talk through a little bit about the latest of Shopify Editions and your brand, you can do the same thing here. So here's a QR code for you. I'm going to pop the link in the chat as well. They'd love to chat with you and love to meet with you. Awesome. Also works. Thank you for fact checking us, Jacqueline. Okay, thank you everyone so much for joining today. Thank you, Natalie, David, and Chad for all of your expert advice. Any last takes or final thoughts that you want to throw out there before we wrap up today?
The only thing I would add is, if you're a merchant and it's overwhelming to go through Editions, but if you can just take 10, 15 minutes, maybe set aside Tuesday morning at 9 o'clock, you're going to take 15 minutes and go through Editions and look at one little space. We live and breathe this stuff, but I go back through it and I'm amazed at I missed this. There was probably 10 things I missed, when Dave and I went back through it this last week. And so it's kind of it's a great thought exercise. Shopify's putting so much energy into rebuilding everything and just reimagining how the platform is going to work, that if you're a merchant, it really behooves you to spend just a little bit of time and going through it. And I know it's hard because you're focused on everything else, but it's pretty amazing what Shopify's doing here. That's it.
That's it. Thank you everyone so much for joining. Have a wonderful rest of your afternoons, and we'll follow up with a very large resource email with lots of links and lots of support for y'all. Thanks everyone. Take care.